You want to put any heavy accumulations of oil and grease needs to be treated like it would your oil filters. If you're at a restaurant, they're going to have two types of dumpsters at restaurants. Grease dumpsters, and this is an example of a grease dumpsters, and your sanitary dumpsters, so you need to pay attention to them, particularly at restaurants. You need to look, they'll be labeled, and look on the inside to see whether they got trash in them or they have grease in them. Do not discharge into these locations. Those are city property. Always filter your wastewater to remove silt, sand, sludge, and debris. Filter through a 200 mesh screen or smaller. To remove the hydrocarbons, filter through an oil absorbent filter or oil water separator. Use remediations method and discharge conveyances that remove the most amount of contaminants. Sand traps, grease traps, oil water separators first. Your utility sinks, cleanouts, inside floor drains, commodes seconds. And obtain the permission of the property owner. Discharge limits. Less than 1,000 gallons per day. There's no permit or notification required. Pre-treatment is highly encouraged. I'm sorry, I'm standing too close to that. Less than 1,000 gallons a day. No permit, but notification are required, but pre-treatment is required. A minimum would be your oil absorbent boom and pre-clean. Over 1,000 gallons a day, you have your permit requirements. Hauling, you want to haul to the proper disposal location if you can't go to the sanitary sewer. You can batch your wastewater and discharge, release less than 1,000 gallons per day on site. And you can also use that to bring the pH into range if you have problems in that. You want to use biodegradable, non-toxic chemicals if possible. Biodegradable does not mean non-toxic. That means they're not okay to go down into the storm drain. Remediation methods. Amount and types of remediations often depends on the volume and nature of the wastewater. Your job is to find the most cost-effective method and still achieve compliance with the rules. Contracts often go to whoever can capture and dispose of the wastewater in the least expensive manner, yet compliant manner. Similar inexpensive mesh screens, oil absorbent pans, booms, and pillows, existing underground oil water separators, grease traps, and clarifiers. Some people will use recycling units. Now, these are recycling units as pre-treatment units. The reason why they're using pre-treatment units, anytime you recycle your wastewater, it concentrates the waste. So if you just pass it one time through the recycling system and then discharge it into the wastewater, into the sanitary sewer, it's a lot less impact on the POTW than what if you're discharging recycled concentrated waste. So the sanitary sewer plants always prefer that you do not recycle if you can possibly not do that, to avoid the concentration of your waste. Recycling units are going to concentrate the waste, and most of the contractors will recycle only 8 to 16 to 20 hours and then purge your system and then recharge your systems to keep from getting into the hazardous waste. If you recycle long enough, it'll eventually turn into hazardous waste. And presently, North Carolina and most states in the United States do not regulate power washing wastewater going up and down the road because it tests non-hazardous. In most cases, for structures and service surrounded by landscaping, wastewater that naturally drains into the soil is allowed. Last night we finally got a definition from the state that as long as you collect your wastewater on property and discharge it to the landscaping area, as long as you follow those rules and not putting too much water on the landscaping area, that's acceptable. You want to be careful about putting too much water on the landscaping area and contaminating the groundwater. And my general rule of thumb is 1,000 gallons per acre per month will generally qualify in most locations, except if you're sitting on a lake, river, or stream where you got surface waters close to the groundwater level. If you're trying to put in post holes and you hit water, you best not do any groundwater it's best not to discharge anything to landscaping. So it's all right to collect your wastewater. You don't want to let it exit the property and then collect it. You want to collect your wastewater before it exits the property, so you have no off-property discharge, and then discharge it to landscaping. Discharge to storm drain. Detergents or chemicals cannot go to the storm drain. So basically it's cold water and no chemicals, and you always want to pre-clean, and if you got any oil and grease spots, you want to pick them up first. And discharges should be free of visible foam and oil sheen. And you need to keep your cleaning water below 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Discharges for environmental waste company are always acceptable, and we have a telephone number of a local environmental waste company there, 704-332-5600. We've already talked about biodegradable detergents several times. They're not okay for discharge to the storm drain. Biodegradability does not mean non-toxic, and you need to try to use non-phosphate detergents if possible. The generator of the waste is your customer, and you need to talk to your customer about who's going to be responsible for the discharge of that waste. The least expensive method of cleaning up that waste is the most efficient. It's cheaper to pick up your dirt and your sludge with a scoop shovel than it is to put it into your remediation equipment. If you're washing on a portable wash mat, if it's got a lot of little ripples in it, all your dirt and sludge will fall out on that wash mat, and then when you get finished, you can pick it up off the surface. You want to let that sludge dry. You normally put it into the dumpster as long as it's about the same dampness as sand out on a beach. Technically, they put it into what they call a paint filter test. They put it in there, and any water drops out of it, well, then it's not acceptable to go into the trash. The reason why that is, if you put that into the trash, and it leaches down through the trash, so then it leaches down into the groundwater. So it needs to be dry enough so no water will exit that. It needs to be like wet, damp sand, similar to what you're going to run into on a beach that you can pick up, but the sand is damp, but there's no water to come out of the bottom of it. There's going to be benefits of compliance. The biggest thing is to clean up the waters of the United States that Charlotte is using for drinking water, so that it's all fishable and swimmable. That's the objective across the entire nation. The contractors that are beginning to put this technology into effect, for the most part, if they'll sell it, they're beginning to get major economic benefits from it. You're going to have to be like a carpenter. You're going to have more in your toolbox than just a hammer. You're going to have various types of water control devices, water remediation devices, sump pumps, vacuums. Some of them get into the complete recycling units, limited recycling units. It's going to depend on the size of the job, on the degree of investment, on how much equipment you have. We're showing you to where you can get in for as little as $200 or $300, and we got an example of a rig out here that's up into the $10,000 to $15,000. The BMPs are reasonable, rational, and logical that you have coming in, so it's going to be up to the contract cleaner to decide whether he wants to spend $300, $3,000, or $15,000 for the remediation equipment. Thank you for your time.